Get up on your feet and give God some praise. He's been good to you, better than you can ever be to yourself. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord, this morning. For your grace and mercy. Who am I that you are mindful of me? That you hear me when I call. Is it true that you are thinking of me? How you love me? It's amazing. Who am I, Lord? Am I that you are mindful of me? That you hear me when I call. Is it true? Tell me, is it true that you are thinking of me? How you love me? It's amazing. I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. He calls me friend. I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. He calls me friend. Who am I that you are mindful of me? That you hear me when I call. Is it true? Tell me, is it true, Lord? Is it true that you are thinking of me? How you love me? It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. He calls me friend. I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. He calls me friend. God Almighty, Lord of glory, you have called me friend. God Almighty, God Almighty, Lord of glory, you have called me friend. God Almighty, Lord of glory, you have called me friend. God Almighty, Lord of glory, you have called me friend. God Almighty, Lord of glory, a friend of God. He calls me friend. I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. He calls me friend. I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. He calls me friend. I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. He calls me friend. He calls me friend. He calls me friend. He calls me friend.
Yes, sir. Who do you call friend? Is it Jesus? Is it Jesus? Glory. Glory, glory in the house of the Lord. Isn't it good to be found in the house of the Lord? What a magnificent place to be together as a body of believers, praising and worshiping the Lord. See, that's what's so important. That's what's so important. You see, coming together as a body of believers is not so much about you. This is about you helping lift up the Lord and praising the Lord and bearing the infirmities of one another. Amen? Coming together. That's what a lot of people don't understand. Church ain't about what we think it's about. It's about coming together, praising and worshiping the Lord and bearing each other's infirmities, knowing that regardless of what's going on in your life, there's a body of believers that you're a part of that care about you and that love you and that's there to support you. Amen?
Amen.
Let's all stand. Father God, we want to thank you for allowing us to come together this morning, Father. We ask that each and every one of us, Father, humble ourselves, open our minds, and soften our hearts to a new beginning, Father. Father, we ask that your will, and only your will, be done in our lives, Father. We ask that each one of us learn to forgive those who have trespassed against us, Father. And as we forgive those, Father, you will forgive us, Father. We ask that we go into earnest, deep prayer as we go through our trials and our tribulations and our tests, Father, that the tempter doesn't tempt us at that most vulnerable moment. Father, we acknowledge that yours is the power of the kingdom and the glory. And we ask, Father, that each and every one of us leave from here today with a desire to come to know you better. A desire to pray and meditate on your word, Father, to get an understanding and a revelation of who and what you are, Father, in our lives. We ask, Father, that our leaders, be they political, ecclesiastical, economical, always make those decisions that are in the best interest of the people, Father, so that the land can prosper and the people can prosper, and all will know and all will see and all will say that it is the Lord God who made this possible. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You may be seated. We're going to find ourselves in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse number 8. 2 Peter 3 and 8, which is a familiar verse to many of us. It's a familiar verse to many of us. And our supporting text is going to come from Galatians chapter 4. And I want to talk to you this morning about something. You know, we oftentimes, is the stream working okay? We oftentimes look at this time of year, and we spend, I ask myself, do we set back some time and reflect on this time of year in this proper perspective as believers, and do we really understand the significance of this time of year in our lives? Oftentimes we get so caught up in the hoopla of Christmas that we lose the focus of Christmas. And that one thing we want to do in church, we want to pay close attention to the message. And when we're in praise, we want to with the praise. Now, if you're using your iPad or your phone to follow scripture, that's one thing. But if you're using your iPad or your phone to play games, that's something else. Amen? And God gave us that technology to use in proper place, proper time, under the proper set of circumstances. All right. So as we travel down this road in this time we call Christmas, oftentimes most of us will go into 4 or 5 months of debt. We overspend, overindulge, because we have gotten the wrong concept of Christmas, Sean. We've gotten the wrong concept. And there's nothing wrong with sharing gifts because the wise men brought gifts to Jesus. But remember why they brought those gifts to Jesus. It was an acknowledgement of who and what he is to each and every one of us. So oftentimes we get so caught up in Christmas that we lose the true focus of that time. So as we prepare for this Christmas season, we're going to look at a whole series of messages on Christmas. And I want to bring it to you today from a perspective that you probably haven't seen it from, because I didn't see it until it was revealed to me by another pastor. And oftentimes, God gives you a word, an endeavoring word that goes deep into your essence and makes you start to think. And I want to talk to you. You've heard me talk to you before about points in time. Many of you have heard me talk about that there are points in time, and that regardless of what you do or what you say or how hard you work or everything, it's just a point in time where things are going to happen. Because they're divine points in time. And I was talking with a friend of mine, an associate of mine, maybe about a week and a half ago. Matter of fact, I think I talked to Deacon Charles about it this week that passed. And we were working on this deal. And I remember him telling me, man, we're going to close this thing on October 22nd. And for some people get paid by a weekly salary. Some people get paid by a check. Hopefully, one day you'll be the person that signs the front of the check, not the back of the check. And some people get paid by putting things together. It just so happened your pastor's one of those people who get paid by putting things together. Pastor Rich, myself, no one received a salary from the church, but we put deals and things together. So I was working with this group of people putting this deal together, and they anticipated this deal closing October the 22nd. And as we got closer to October the 22nd, I sort of said, AK, I don't think this thing's going to close on the 22nd. I think it's going to be more like February or March. And he said, nah, man, everything is in place, it's done. I said, man, there are points in time, and I'm just getting an uncomfortable feeling about this. Now, we've been working on it 6-7 months, but I'm still just uncomfortable because I don't think it's right where it's at. And I just had a feeling internally that it wasn't where it's at. Lo and behold, we get a call from the attorney that says just that look, this deal is not going to close until February. And the reason why I bring that to you is that regardless of what we did, how hard we worked, how much time we allocated, there are points in time when things are going to happen, and regardless of what you do, you can't change that point in time. So I want you to step back and think about that, and think about Christmas, and think about a point in time relative to Christmas, and get away from the gifts. And what I mean by that is that we oftentimes preach on the virgin birth, the Jesus being conceived miraculously, and we talk about those things, but we don't oftentimes talk about when Jesus was born. Have you ever noticed that? We concentrate on everything but those essentials. And what's important for us as believers is to come to the reality of when Jesus was born. Can anybody here tell me when Jesus was born? Can anybody tell me? Does everybody believe that Jesus was born on December the 25th? Everybody sort of buy into that? No. You see, I can't, you can't, and no one can tell us the exact day that Jesus was born. There's only one person in the universe who knows the exact day that Jesus was born? That's the Father. Because the Father ordained a certain time under a certain set of environments for Jesus to be born. Now step back and go to 2 Peter, and I want you to see the gravity of this. You know what? Let's go to Galatians chapter 4 first. Galatians 4 and 4. Galatians 4 and 4. Galatians 4 and 4. Everybody has it? New Testament, after Corinthians, Galatians. Galatians 4 and 4. Now, a little bit about this. Remember, this is Peter writing to the Galatians. And look what he says to them. Remember the concept, point in time, and I'm going to add another wrinkle from it. It's called timing. Point in time and timing. Now, watch it. Galatians 4 and 4. But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law. Do you see that? Now watch it very carefully. But when what? The fullness. What that means is that everything was the way it was supposed to be. Everything was exactly the way it was supposed to be. It wasn't no if this, but that, when this, or this. It's in the fullness of God's time is when he sent for his Son. Now, what does that say to us as believers? God knows the exact time that things are supposed to happen. And when everything was ready, when everything was prepared, God sent forth his Son. Look what it says. But when the fullness, pay close attention to that word. That means when everything has sort of come together, the fullness of time, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman. So what we need to concentrate as believers, not so much that an emperor, Constantine, decides to take a pagan holiday and attribute that pagan holiday to Christ. That isn't what we should concentrate on. And we shouldn't concentrate on the gifts and the trinkets. What we should concentrate on is that God has a divine time for you and me, just as he had a divine time for his Son, Jesus Christ. So as you start to go to and fro and you're wondering why things aren't happening in your life the way you want them to happen, when it should happen, maybe the fullness of time haven't manifested itself. Maybe all of the circumstances and all of the environments and all of the people and all the things that needs to happen has not happened. The fullness of time hasn't happened in your life. Now let's apply this to the Christmas story that we all talk about. You see, God is an on-time God. God knows when things need to happen, how they need to happen, and under what circumstances it need to happen. And that's why, as believers during this time, we need to be focused on Christ. Don't get caught in the commercialism of Christmas. All that's going to do is break you financially, and then come March, it's going to cause depression and anger and frustration in your life because you got more bills than you got income to be able to take care of that, and you spend all your money, all your time, all your resources, putting everything into a day that may not be a fullness of time day in your life. Now, I'm not saying we should enjoy this time, but we should enjoy this time. It's a blessing, it's a healing time. But don't get caught in the commercialism. Don't get caught in what may not be the fullness of your time. Because what happens is that God, through his Son, teaches us that it's in the fullness of time that everything's going to happen. Have you ever asked yourself why Jesus wasn't born during the time of Moses? Have you asked yourself that question? During the time of David. You remember during David's time, they kept saying the Messiah is coming. The Messiah is coming. As a matter of fact, that's all they were looking for. But the fullness of time hadn't manifested itself. All the right circumstances hadn't fallen into place. And see, God sitting up high above, he knows the exact time. He knows the exact time that that deal is going to close that I was working on with all those other people. He knows the exact time. Because everything's going to fall into line. And then in your life, there are things that you're looking for, there are things that you're asking for, and the fullness of time hasn't manifested itself. So you get yourself aggravated, you get yourself frustrated, you get angry because you think that things aren't happening for you, but the fullness of time has not manifested itself. You see, when you look back at the birth of Jesus, Jesus wasn't born among kings. He was a king, but he was born among shepherds because the fullness of time had happened. Now step back a little farther. When you take a little time and you look at this, and you look at it in its in-depth, and look at it, things happen when they're supposed to happen. And watch this. They never happen that way again. You see, all of the circumstances surrounding Jesus' birth were right. Let me tell you why. Remember at the Tower of Babel, God dispersed everybody and made them all speak different languages? And in almost 400 years, God didn't talk too much to the people. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes this young, dynamic general that goes and he does something that nobody has done before or no one has done since. What does he do? He conquers the whole known world. You know who that general was? Alexander the Great. Alexander conquers the whole known world. Every part of the world that was known to mankind at that time, in 12 years, Alexander subdued the whole known world. Now, why is that important? When Alexander subdues the whole known world, he also brings what you call Greek culture, the Greek explosion, the Greek literature, the Greek drama, the Greek language. He brings all those things to all of the known world. But how God would have it, Alexander, after doing all of this, dies unexpectedly. And when Alexander dies unexpectedly at a very young age, in his late 20s or early 30s, Alexander just dies. No one knows the reason. He just dies. And then his generals at that time divide the world, his four generals divide the world into quadrants, into Northern Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. And the thing about Alexander is that all the known world at that time starts to speak Greek. So Greek is the uniform language, Sean, if you want to get on the third row, that's fine. Everybody speaks. So that now there's a universal language that everybody now speaks. Now, why is that important? Because the Greeks, being historians, the Greeks loving to write, the Greeks loving to perpetuate themselves, decide that they're going to translate the Hebrew Bible into Greek. Some of us known as the Septuagint, I'm sorry. And so that's just the Greek translation of the Bible. Now, why is that important? Because now you have a uniform language in all the known world. Never had it up until that point. So now everybody is speaking Greek. The Greek culture is traveling all over. Alexander dies. His generals divide the world up. But as empires grow, they also fall. So now you have this new empire that rises up called the Roman Empire. Now, why is that important? Timing is the key to everything. Timing is the key. And God focused on timing. We spend all of our time dealing with time. But God is a timing God. And that timing happens at certain points in time. Remember that. Points in time. Points in time. Timing, points in time. God is a God of timing. He knows what point in time things are supposed to happen. Not you, not me. There's always a point in time that things are going to happen. So I'm giving you a little history lesson. So Alexander conquers, Alexander dies. They divide up the empire into 4 quadrants. All of them speak Greek. A unification of the language. Then all of a sudden now comes this little thing called Rome. Now why is that important? Because what happens with Rome is that you have a political, remember Alexander put the culture in place. Now the Romans come on the thing, they put a political and economic system in place. So remember you have the cultural, all the Greek culture, the writing, the understanding, the language, the even dealing with, and the Greeks, remember the Greeks had many gods, but they had one God that was of all those gods, Zeus. So the Romans comes along, and the Romans put a political and economic system in place that has never been duplicated. Some of us have heard the concept that all roads led to Rome. That means everything dumped into the Roman Empire. So now you have a political and economic system in place that's just right. Why is that important? Because when you became a Roman citizen, you could travel anywhere in the world under protection. And what the Romans did, the Romans put together a system of communication that allowed you and me and anybody else to send a letter or to communicate or to do whatever we need to do. Remember Paul sent all those letters? Have you ever asked yourself why those letters weren't intercepted? Because when you were a Roman citizen, you could send a message anywhere in the known world and no one would get it but you. So now God has allowed the culture to come into perspective. He also allows an economic and political system to manifest itself that impacts all of us. And look what happens. The emperor calls for a census. The Roman emperor called for a census. And if we can trace back, that was one of the first universal census that happens. Now, why is that so important? Because that census happens when? When Jesus was born. So you have a cultural system, you have a political system, and you have a whole system arising in the world. And the Romans, for almost 200 years, dominate the world. So you can go anywhere in the Roman Empire. Now you got to keep this together. Alexander conquers the known world. He dies. His generals divided into 4 quadrants of Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. And you can travel in anywhere in those spots and be protected. Remember the guy by the name of Paul? He's the one who wrote the book of Galatians. Paul traveled to most parts of the known world spreading the gospel. You see, God anticipated that he was going to allow Alexander to conquer the known world, allow Greek to become the standard language. Now, why is that important? Because all of the apostles, you know what they preached from? That Greek translation. They preached from that substitute, the Greek translation. So what happens is that now you have an environment in the whole world where the gospel can be spread throughout the whole known world. All the things that Jesus did and said can now go throughout the whole known world. God is a God of timing. We're people of time. We watch the watch. We watch the clock. We watch when the sun set, when the sun rise, because we're so focused on time, but God is focused on timing. And there's a point in time when everything is supposed to happen. So as we look at this Christmas time, keep this in mind. It's not so much about Christmas. It's about this is the point in time that God allowed his son to be born into the world. The date isn't important. The month isn't important. What's important is that God chose that hour, that day, that time for that child to be born. And he allowed a system that all of the gospels, you got to understand that when you read Galatians, Corinthians, Ephesians, Colossians, when you read all these things, do you realize that these are letters that Paul wrote to all of these different places in the Roman Empire? And in the absence of God allowing the Roman Empire to manifest itself, and remember, the Romans built on what the Greeks did. So God is a God of perfect timing. He's not a God that's so much focused on time like we are. He's focused on timing. And there are points in time when things are going to happen, both politically, economically, and socially. And the thing about the Roman Empire, remember, Rome is unique in another aspect. For almost 200 years, Rome had peace. So Rome was able to build roads and aqueducts and libraries and all of the cultural things and all of the things that we enjoy. And God knew that that was the right time. It wasn't the right time during David or Solomon's time. Because God knew that between David and Solomon, the kingdom of Israel was going to be divided anyway. He knew they were going to be brought into captivity, and he knew the people were going to stop worshiping. They're going to start worshiping idols. And he knew the right time for them to come back to him. And all these things have to manifest itself before God will allow anything to happen. It must be the right time. And time is so important. Now, the last aspect we want to talk about is spiritual time. See, remember I told you that the kingdom of Israel was divided? The north, the south, Israel and Judah. They go into captivity. They're no longer worshiping and praising the Lord. They have to worship foreign gods. God allows them to come back at the perfect time. They come back and they start to worship God the way they worshiped him before they went into captivity, the way they worshiped him before they did all the things that turn away from God. God allows them to come back, and now they're united in their trust and belief in God. And they start to build these synagogues. The only temple that was after that was the Temple of Jerusalem, but they start to build these synagogues. And in these synagogues, when you remember the book of Acts, what does Paul look for everywhere he goes? He looks for a synagogue. And he goes there and he preaches to them and he lets them know that the Messiah that they have been praying for, the Messiah that they have been wishing for, that Messiah has come. And where is Paul teaching them from? He's teaching them from the Septuagint, that translation that Alexander allowed, that God allowed the Greeks to translate the old Hebrew text into Greek. So God knew that the culture time, culturally the time was right, politically and economically the time was right, and spiritually the time was right. What does that tell you? If it tells you anything. That everything happens according to God's perfect time. It may not be politically the right time. It may not be economically or socially the right time. It may not be, more importantly, spiritually the right time. Because God is a God of timing. God isn't a God of time. So in our lives, everything is tied to what we call God's timing mechanism. God is a God of timing. He Do things according to his time, not your time, not my time, but according to his time. And God will always work things to our good if we allow him. And we have to realize that there are political consequences with everything you do. Don't fool yourself. Politics is in your life. There are politics determining what you're going to name your child. Politics. There's politics in the church. There's politics on your job. There's politics in your bedroom. You got to negotiate with your wife. And she has to negotiate with you. So there's politics in every, I'm telling you what I know. There's politics in every component of your life. There's certain cultural things that have to happen. Because your mind has to be a certain way. Your thinking has to be a certain way. There are cultural things that have to manifest itself in their life before you are ready to take the right step. You ever seen somebody who try to make a presentation and don't understand the culture of people they're making a presentation to? You know, like a plum fool. As a matter of fact, they're not even listening to you. They're wondering, where this person coming from? So if things are not culturally ready, things are not politically ready, things are not spiritually ready, it's not going to happen. And the only person knows when that perfect time is God. And that's why God is a God of timing. Timing is everything in our life as believers. Understand what I'm telling you? There's a point in time when all of those factors come into play, and it's according to God's time, not yours or not mine. And no matter what we do or what we say, it's not going to happen. Remember, the Jews they were looking for this Messiah. But everything had to be just right. Everything had to be just right. And God chose the just right time. Why is that? Because God is a just right God. He's never too early. He's never too late. He's always just on time. And the reason why he can always be just on time is because of who and what he is. And it's so important that we understand that there's a appointed time for everything. There was a appointed time for Jesus to be born. There was a appointed time for Jesus to die. There was a appointed time for Jesus to be resurrected. And there is an appointed time for you and I to be born again. Just like we were born. Everything happens according to God's time. And we get so mixed up and get this thing so confused that we forget the essence of this time. It's God's timing that counts. Don't get so caught in the gifts. Don't get, and I'll say again, the gifts are fine. But if you don't have the resources to buy a gift at this time, what does Jesus show us? Love. You see, oftentimes love is more important than things. But we get so caught into things, and you can give a person as many things as you want. They're not going to love you because of things. They're going to love you because of you. And that's why it's so important that as we spend time looking at this time we call Christmas, that we don't lose focus of the reality of what it's all about. There's an appointed time for all things. And only God knows that appointed time. And there's timing, and only God knows that time. And we know it's time. Let me just close with this. Go to 2 Peter. We're in 2 Peter. I want you to see something. See, we get this thing. 2 Peter, yeah, 2 Peter 3 and 8. I want you to see something as we bring this to a close, because it's so important. See, we get so impatient. We get so agitated. We get so caught in self-gratification And at this time, we can become intoxicated in self-gratification. What I want. We put so much pressure on our loved ones for what I want that we have no idea of what they're dealing with or what they're going through. So as we come to this Christmas time, and we're going to spend a little bit more time looking at the shepherds and all that in the next 2 weeks, but I wanted you to get a sense of, and I want you to get into this mindset, and I want you to get into this culture, and I want you to get into this political mood, I want you to get into this economic mood, and I want you to get into this spiritual mood so you can receive this time according to the way God sees this time. God is about time, and remember that. And God is in the timing business. We're in the time business. God is in the time business. Now look at 2 Peter. 2 Peter 3 and 8, I think. Yeah, 3 and 8. Now I want you to see something. How I can tell you, this is how I can tell you that God is in the timing business. I want you to see something. Well, you've seen this before, but I want you to look at it very carefully. We into time. We measure, think about this. I want you, when you go home, pray on this. Everything that you do, you base it on time. There's not a thing that you don't do each and every day that you don't tie to time. Let me show you what God thinks about time. I told you, pick 2 Peter. Okay. I got to help me sometime, you know. Now watch this. 2 Peter 3 and 8. I'm going to read the whole thing. Now, let me just say, okay, let's just go. It says, but beloved, do not forget this one thing, that with the Lord, one day is what? And 1,000 years is like what? What does that tell you? God don't care about time. You care about time. You care about time. God don't care about no time. God cares about timing because time is irrelevant to him. It's timing that's important to him. And what we have to come to the realization that God is never late, he's never early, he's always on time. And God has a plan for my life, and God has a plan for your life. Remember I told you, I grew up, met with a friend of mine, an associate of mine. I only have one or two friends. But I met with an associate of mine, my little boy always told me, Dad, I have a lot of friends. Your mom said y'all don't have a lot of friends, but as he grow up, he'll understand it better. I have a handful of people I can call friends. Him and I have that philosophical debate when I pick him up sometimes. Dad, I know your mama don't like me to say friends, but these are my friends. I said, okay, if you want to, sometimes we gotta let a child be a child. But what's important is that God is a God of timing, not time. And what I want to leave with you here today, that God has a plan for you, and God has a plan for me, and it's only going to happen in the fullness of his time. And when we look at 1,000 years, and God looks at 1,000 years, the way we see 1,000 years, and the way God sees 1,000 years, is totally different. And that's why it's so important that you come to the realization that during this Christmas time, we need to accept Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior. God has an exact time for everything for you and an exact time for everything for me. You can't do it on anybody else's time because they view time the way you do. But God is a God of timing. And then when all those things come into perfect harmony, remember, I've told you before, God takes a panoramic view of everything. He's looking at the past, the present, and the future simultaneously. And God is on a continuum that never stops. In order for us to be able to comprehend what we get caught in time, we have to stop on that continuum. So we deal with either the present or the past because we haven't encountered the future. But God is three-dimensional. He's on past, present, and future. So God knows that there's a point in time that according to his timing, it's the right time for you to be where he wants you to be who he wants you to be, and to receive what he wants you to receive. So as you look at Christmas, I want you to look at it a whole different way. I want you to look at it that God sent his son in the perfect time, in a perfect environment, so you and I can be saved. And as we rejoice about Christmas, rejoice about a God that is a God of time. Do you receive that message? Do you receive that message? God is a God of timing. God is a God of time. Now the big question is it your time? Is it your time to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? Is it your time to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? See, have you embraced Jesus as your Lord and Savior? This is your time. This is the exact time. Satan is telling you, no, not now. But God is telling you, yes, now is the exact time.